Hey YouTube, today I wanted to create a video about how to assign switch ports to different VLANs. So the first thing to know would be, what is a VLAN? Let's start with just what it's a LAN. It's a local area network. So if you bought a switch at a big box store, say a little 5-port switch, you can plug in, say, a couple computers, a printer, maybe even a network storage device. If you get these devices an IP, they can all communicate with each other because they're all on the same network. That's essentially what a LAN is. Devices that connect to each other on the same network. Now, network and LAN has been used almost interchangeably here. A LAN and a network technically operate at different layers, but work together generally in a one-to-one fashion. They don't necessarily have to, but usually do. So if there's a LAN, there's a network assigned to it. Same with a VLAN. One VLAN has one network assigned to it. So this I might use interchangeably as well. Okay, so now that we kind of understand what a LAN is, it's just a network. Well, what's a VLAN? Well, a VLAN is a virtualized local area network. So it segments the switch into different LANs, so you don't have to buy multiple switches. So generally this time we're going to have to get a more expensive switch, one that can be managed, something you can configure. Let's say we have a 12-port switch and we wanted to separate the switch into two different VLANs. We would use a number as an identifier for that VLAN. So maybe in my example I'll be using VLANs 10 and 20. We can assign VLANs 10 to maybe the first 6 ports, and then the VLAN 20 to the second half. And to do this on a Cisco switch, we're going to use the command switch port access VLAN and then the number. Alright, so once we have a port assigned to a certain VLAN, they can not by default talk to devices on another VLAN. Now if we have two computers connected to the same switch on both VLAN 10, they can communicate, but once we move one of those computers to another VLAN, they'll be unable to communicate with each other. And this is useful in separating a network, so not everything is on one flat network. Some of the benefits of this separation is to keep the broadcast domain small. It allows for segmentation of the networks using ACLs between the different VLANs, and it just helps with management of the overall network. Alright, so now let's do a little step-by-step configuration of a switch with some of these separate VLANs. Now the first major requirement is to have an idea of what you want the overall network to look like. So understanding the design of the network is very important. In the configuration that we'll be following, I'm going to create a network that will have 4 different VLANs. One's going to be for data, one will be for voice, one I'll create for servers, and one for management. First off, we'll need to connect the switch, initially using a console cable, or in my case, through GNS, so it's command or directly to it. And then once connected, we will be in user exec mode. In my case, I'm in what's called privilege exec mode, and to get through that, if you are in user exec mode, you type the enable command. And then once we're in the switch in this mode, to do any configurations, we must go into configuration mode using the configure terminal command. So in here you can see that the changed how it looks from the hashtag to config with a hashtag. Alright, so now that we're in the configuration mode, we can begin configuring. So the first thing to do is create a couple of VLANs. So we'll create VLAN 10 and VLAN 11. So we type in VLAN 10 and VLAN 11, and you'll notice we go into a submode of VLAN configuration. To get out of this submode, we just type exit. So now we've created 2 new VLANs, 10 and 11. And with this, we can now assign these VLANs to actual interfaces. On this switch, I'll dedicate the first half to VLAN 10 and VLAN 11, because that's going to be my voice. And the second half I'll assign to a new VLAN I create. So let's start by configuring interface Ethernet 00. And again, we go into a new submode for interface. So here we can now use the command I mentioned earlier, switch port access VLAN, and then the number. Now, one other thing I'd recommend is to use the switch port mode access command. That just makes the command, makes it so it knows the devices connecting on the other side are only going to be endpoints. So they're just for access connections. And now, if we want to assign the voice VLAN, there's actually a special command to do this. Since sometimes PCs can connect through an IP phone, the command for a Cisco switch is switch port voice VLAN 11. So here, instead of using access, we have voice. And now one other command we can do while we're in this interface is to give it a description. So we'll do that now as well. And we'll name this host port. So now to speed things up, so we can actually use something called the range command with the interface command to modify multiple ports at once. So I'm going to type interface range gigabit, Ethernet 0, 1 through 3, Ethernet 1, 0 through 3. And we're going to type the exact same commands we did before. Switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10, switch port voice VLAN 11, and also we're going to do the description. Host port. And then enter. And the nice thing is that does it to all the ports all at once instead of doing it one at a time. So now we will change the last ports, the last 8 ports, to this server VLAN, VLAN 20. So I will use the interface range Ethernet 2, 0 through 3, Ethernet 3, 0 through 3, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20, and description server ports. Now you might notice that there's this message we received after we added that VLAN. Since we didn't manually configure the VLAN, it was created for us. So that's what that means right here. Now one last thing we can do to make troubleshooting or just basically seeing our VLANs, give it a description as well. So what we can do is go into the VLAN again by typing VLAN 10, and to put a description on it we use the name command. So I will just call name and just give it data VLAN. Alright, so we have now created VLANs and successfully assigned them to ports. So a few commands that are useful for verifying and troubleshooting this VLAN configuration are as follows. So let's get out of configuration mode by hitting end. We can use the show VLAN Brief command. And this is nice that it shows the VLANs that are created as well as the name that we gave it and what ports are assigned to it. Another command that's useful is show VLAN ID and the number for the VLAN. So it's 10. So it's very similar. So this, instead of showing everything, we'll just show the one VLAN you're interested in and the ports it's associated with. Another useful command is the show interface Ethernet 00. So what this command will do, will show you what's on the port, if it's in an up state, or you can actually have traffic go across it. It shows if there is traffic going through. Another useful command we can use is the show running config interface Ethernet 00. And this command just shows the running config for the port. So the description, the access VLAN, the voice VLAN, and the mode it's in. To see a brief overview of all the interfaces, a good command to use is the show interface status command. Here we can see the name that we gave all the interfaces, the state it's in, and the VLANs assigned to it. And the final command that's helpful in troubleshooting your VLANs is show interface Ethernet 00 switchboard. And this command shows us what mode it's in. So here we can see that it's administratively set to static access, what the VLAN is, and the voice VLAN. So now that we've shown that we've configured this, how can we show that if a device is on the same VLAN that they can talk to each other? What we can do is I have a couple computers, some very basic computers here. PC1 is on VLAN 10. PC2 is on VLAN 10. And PC3 is on our server VLAN. We can see that by the IPs it gets. This one's in the same network, so these are on the same. I just made the third octet the VLAN number, so 1010, and here we're 1020. So since I'm on the same network, I should be able to ping computer 2 from computer 1, and I can. And I should not be able to ping PC3 on, oops. Okay, so this will work because this is a layer 3 switch. So let me fix that. There. Now we should now it should not work properly. So let's try that again. Yeah, now I cannot send it to the other switch. So let's try that again to make sure I can still ping PC2, and I can still ping PC2. So why it worked originally is this switch that I have here is a layer 2, layer 3 switch, so it does allow routing. Usually that's not allowed unless you have a layer 3 switch where you can route between VLANs, or if you use something called router on a stick, which I'll discuss in a later video. But that's it for today. So that's going to wrap up the beginning on how to create basic VLANs on a switch. On the next video, I want to start to go over trunking between two different switches. All right, thanks everyone.